that what you intended?
I can bring her onto the panelist side. That's fine.
Let's unmute. I wasn't sure if she wanted to be, as I know she's part of the development of this site, so I want to be mindful of that. Can you unmute her real quick?
There you
go. Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome everybody. I'm Councilmember Deb Davis. I am the council representative for this district that includes the Rose Garden and Shasta-Hanchett Park neighborhoods. And I want to thank you all for attending this evening. As we all know from not only the pandemic, but before the pandemic, homelessness has been a very large and growing problem in our city and in the county, and frankly, across all big cities in the United States. We have a need not only for more housing here, but we have a need for housing paired with services to ensure that people can stay housed and be successful in life and also with their housing so that they don't become homeless again. And that's really what we've been working on with and paired with the Office of Supportive Housing. And you'll see that Consuelo is here from the Office of Supportive Housing from the County of Santa Clara. That's working together. The city and the county work together to provide permanent housing and supportive housing at the same time. One of the things that I'm sure somebody's going to go through tonight, but I just want to make sure you're all aware, the HomeKey funding is from the state and it's on a rolling application basis. So the reason this is happening as quickly as it is because we at the city are trying to, in partnership with the county and our service providers, are trying to get our application in as soon as possible before the money runs out so that we can acquire this housing that is so desperately needed here. I think it's important to note, the reason I mentioned it is because this is not the be all end all. What I do in my district with housing projects like this, and with anything having to do with homelessness, is I have community advisory, and I call them community advisory committees. We do CACs, just because I like the acronym better than anything else. And so what we do those, and that is really an opportunity for you to stay involved as a neighbor in these projects, not just before we do the application, but after, when hopefully our application gets accepted and before people move in, to really co-create what will be in the neighborhood. And that's something that we continue to do. And even it goes on after folks have moved into the site. I have only one active community advisory committee right now at Evans Lane that's still going on, and we have folks already living in that site. We had another overnight warming location at Bascom Community Center that was our first community advisory committee group, and that CAC met for over a year into the pandemic, and it was really I like to talk about it because it was a very successful model in that it allowed for that site, which was really started for the winter months, the cold months, for people to have a warm, safe place to sleep. And it turned into, during the pandemic, a 24/7 shelter. And we were able to do that so quickly because we had the partnership of not just the residents, the neighbors who live there in the homes, but also the surrounding businesses, because we already had that established group. So I find a lot of value in it, and my office is heavily involved. We'll have a designated person in my office who is part of that, and we'll talk about that later. But I just wanted to let everyone know this is the first of many discussions, and I encourage you to stay involved. And if it seems like it's happening fast, it's really because we're trying to grab that money before everybody else gets it. So I'll turn it back over to our presenters. I think, Jeff, are you?
Yeah. So I'm gonna share my screen, and then we're gonna have Isaac Arona introduce himself in just a moment, and he's with the housing department, and he's gonna start the presentation. But let me just share my screen here.
And while you're doing that, for people who have entered in a little bit late, I think we've got about 15 more people than we had when I started talking. The Q&A is open. You can type questions in there, but we will also have a live Q&A at the end.
Thank you, Council Member. All right, Isaac, if you want to take it away, go for it. Just instruct me when you want to advance the slides.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you, Councilmember Davis. My name is Isaac Orona. I'm with the City of San Jose Housing Department, and with me tonight, I have Consuelo Hernandez with the County of Santa Clara, we have John Bigley with Urban Housing Communities, and Renee Ramirez with Home First. I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. I know you're all busy, but this is an important and critical opportunity here. And again, thank you for spending your time with us this evening as we present and talk about the Arena Hotel and Project HomeKey. Next slide. Oh, HomeKey, we talked about that, Jeff. HomeKey program strategies. I'm going to lean on Consuelo to kick this off, and we could talk about our regional strategies, and we could talk specifically about Arena Hotel.
Thanks, Isaac. Good evening, everybody. Consuelo Hernandez, Director with the Office of Supportive Housing. Happy to be here tonight to talk about this collaborative effort that we've been working on for a few months now. As Councilmember Davis indicated, this is a very fast-moving program and opportunity, but I want to rest assured for all of you that the engagement is something that we're committed to on an ongoing basis. So a little bit about the strategy. We really started from a place of lessons learned. HomeKey round one, we were able to very quickly provide interim and permanent housing across the county. The round was really fast. The NOFA from HCD was released in July, and it closed 30 days after. You needed to acquire the property within 3 months. And despite the speed, with round one, we were able to create 364 homes for homeless individuals and families. One of the lessons learned from the approach was, how do you, within that timeline, slow it down a little bit, do community engagement, get your application in, and at the same time, continue to talk about how we use the project, how we use the site, how we talk about how we end homelessness. All of that through the lens and framing of the community plan to end homelessness. We've identified a range of housing opportunities that address the current gaps in the system. So the Office of Supportive Housing, in partnership with all of the cities across the county, I think we are almost up to 9 cities now, have a housing bond or a Measure A funded project, either under construction, waiting for their entitlements, waiting for tax credits award, but it takes a really long time for the housing to be built. On a good day, we say, Isaac, maybe 5 years from the time that you identify a property until the time you get through entitlements, financing, and you open the doors. And so what do we do with folks in the interim that are waiting for their home to be built? And so we really took that approach, and how do we engage with the community? How do we engage with those with lived experience? And what are collectively the lessons learned from our system that we can use with this great opportunity in HomeKey? So that was the strategy that we took. Next slide, please. To show you all, despite COVID, our office, in partnership with so many other people, 41 partners, we actually had a staff person from San Jose, the Deputy Director Reagan, was stationed in our office for about a year in our COVID response. And despite all of that, we were still able to house over the last 18 months, over 4,000 people. We've been able to double the temporary shelter capacity. A lot of that is thanks to the city's great work and effort in creating 3 emergency interim housing sites during that period. And that will become a permanent fixture in our temporary shelter capacity. And you'll see here the community plan has 4 specific goals that we're tracking. This shows you the progress. HomeKey allows us an opportunity to move this needle even quicker. Next slide, please. A few HomeKey basics. The funding, as Councilmember Davis mentioned, is an application that is issued by the state of California through the Department of Housing and Community Development. They released their notice of funding availability in September, and the application window opened on September 30th. In order to be eligible to apply for the funding, and we do not have the funds right now, we still have to submit a competitive application. you have to be a public entity. That means in our county that it can be the city of San Jose, the city of Palo Alto, the county of Santa Clara, or the housing authority. That is the one primary requirement that the state has imposed, that it has to be one of us that takes the lead. Now we can partner with a developer, we can partner with a service provider as a co-applicant, but the primary lead always has to be a public entity. Within the HomeKey program, there's a geographic distribution of funds by districts. And in our Bay Area, there's about 200 million that's available for us. It's very competitive. There's also a homeless youth set aside, where you get certain bonus points if you are accessing and providing services to youth that are in transition. And transition age youth is based on age. Typically, it's people that are leaving the foster system aged 18 through 25. Awards will be made on a continuous basis. So basically, HCD through their NOFA has indicated that once you submit your application, they will notify you within 45 days if you are in, if they have more questions, whether you need to modify your application, or maybe they don't select you. And the goal is you get a bonus if you submit your application before January. And if all of the geographic allocations are dispersed and all of the homeless youth set-asides are dispersed, we may have an opportunity, if funds are not used by other regions or geographic areas, to still be competitive. So with all of that in mind, next slide, please. We came together as a community to identify 9 properties across the county. And you're seeing them all listed here. Tonight, we're talking about the Arena Hotel, which the team will talk a little bit more in detail about the site. And you'll see here, we made a distinction between the units that are proposed to be permanent housing versus those that are proposed to be interim housing for the purposes of the HomeKey application, but that may have an opportunity for future development. I'll give you the example of Bella Vista Inn in the city of Santa Clara. We are proposing to use it on an interim basis for 64 households that are currently waiting to be housed, and run them through a program that we use in partnership with the Social Services Agency, the Housing and Disability Advocacy Program, where folks will come in. We will help connect them to the medical provider that they need to document their disability, and then they will move on into their permanent home. All of this happens while our partner, Resources for Community Development, is working on the long-term plan, which is to redevelop the site and build up to 120 units by preserving some of those existing hotels and building a new 7-story tower. So that's happening in tandem. We have an opportunity to use the hotel in the interim, and trying to tackle 2 things at once. Next slide, please. And this is a geographic map that shows across the county where these 9 sites are. So you'll notice at the very top, we have a property in Palo Alto working with Life Moves to create interim housing, some work happening in Mountain View, Santa Clara, Central San Jose, and then down south. And with that, I believe I hand it over to you, Isaac.
Great. Thanks, Consuelo. Yeah, I want to talk about the San Jose selection process overall. In May 2021, the City of San Jose Housing Department released an RFI, a request for information, essentially trying to do 2 things. Number 1 was identify hotels and motels available for purchase. And number 2 was identify developer or sponsors interested in managing a HomeKey site. On the hotel motel front, we had a series of brokers and owners that responded to our RFI, and we talked about 16 different hotels and motels that were potential opportunities, which we toured and we visited. And we're looking at a couple of items there. One being, what's the overall sales price? What's the condition of the property? Did the units have kitchenettes or kitchens included in those units? What's the land use designation? And what's the overall future development potential? And on the development side, we had about 8 developer sponsors that responded to our RFI. And out of the gates, what we're looking for was, hey, developer sponsors, do you have a hotel and motel in mind that you could bring to the table, and you have site control? Again, we're trying to target hotels and motels for the Project HomeKey opportunity. Apart from that, we're looking at their affordable housing experience. their experience in housing the homeless, and then prior HomeKey experience. As you know, this is 2.0, and there was a HomeKey award that was done last year. And as a result of this HomeKey RFI process, there was a series of interviews and conversations and talk with owners and brokers, developer sponsors. And at the gates, what we're trying to accomplish here was, pair the top tiered hotels that best suited the city of San Jose's interest with the top developer sponsor candidates that would be most successful in applying for the Project HomeKey application. And so with that, next slide. With that, we have Urban Housing Communities. They are an affordable housing developer that responded to our RFI, and they brought to us the Arena Hotel. They had site control and through a purchase and sales agreement. The Arena Hotel is an 89-unit hotel on the Alameda, 817 Alameda. It is primarily made up of SRO, single room occupancies that are going to be targeting individuals and families. The land use on this is best suited for future development. So that check that box, we checked that box on that front. I want to keep in mind that this particular site, the Reno Hotel, is in the Diridon Station Arena plan. And my understanding is a quarter of the new development in the Diridon area will be dedicated to new affordable housing. So this just kind of worked really well for the current use and what we're trying to accomplish with HomeKey, and then future development opportunities down the road. Next slide. With that, I would like to introduce John Bigley with Urban Housing Communities. He could speak a little bit about his organization and what he's trying to accomplish in partnership with the City of San Jose.
Great. Thank you very much, Isaac, for the introduction, and thank you all for joining this community meeting. So Urban Housing Communities is a family-owned, mission-driven company dedicated to developing affordable, sustainable housing that benefits communities and stakeholders. And when we say communities and stakeholders, that is the local groups that we like to reach out to, the city staff, city council, to try to understand what their needs are and what they're trying to accomplish on the housing front. We have over 2,500 affordable units, 28 properties between California and Hawaii. Our main footprint has always been California. Probably 7 or 8 years ago, we ventured out into Hawaii. And we focus on all types of affordable housing, anywhere from homeless housing, permanent supportive housing, homeless veteran housing, for families, for individuals, kind of the whole array. We have developments in Santa Clara County, and we continue to be dedicated to the community. One of the, there's kind of, for us, there was kind of twofold in why the Reno Hotel was selected. One was we have been made aware of issues in the local area with the homeless, and we wanted to try and address that. There's also been some issues with the Reno Hotel. So through this program that the state is putting out, we went to the city and said, hey, through this program, I think this would be a good idea, a good opportunity to be able to control this asset and be able to work with local service providers that will be able to provide case management services, social services that can really help and benefit this community. And in addition to that, as Isaac pointed out, this development site has the ability to provide additional units in the future. The idea would be to demo the hotel and provide additional affordable housing for the community. And that affordable housing and what that looks like will be done over the next 4 to 5 years. We're working on that, again, with the community, with the local council's office, and with the city and county of San Jose and Santa Clara County. And we do that because we've got very good relationships, with the local groups, local organizations, and in addition to what you're going to hear from Home First, which is a fantastic service provider. We will obviously have on-site property management. That would be provided by Hyder Company. And Hyder Company has been in business for over 45 years and providing property management to the full range of affordable housing, including homeless. So we pride ourselves in being able to tackle some unique properties and opportunities, and being able to bring the parties together that can make it very successful. With that, next slide. And these are just some pictures of some of our properties. Crisis at Monterey in the top left corner that has permanent supportive housing included. The middle one is Windsor Veterans Village that has homeless veterans. Then we have Crossings at Santa Rosa on the right side that provides affordable housing for the local community. And the left bottom corner is Horizons at Morgan Hill, which is a affordable housing development for seniors. So this just kind of is gives kind of the whole spectrum of the different types of housing that we develop and what they look like. And with that, I will turn it back to Isaac, who will be introducing Renee Ramirez from Home First.
Great. Yes, I'd like to introduce Renee Ramirez with Home First. They will be the service provider that's going to be partnering with Urban Housing Communities and John's group. So with that, Renee, go ahead and talk a little bit about your organization.
Thank you, Isaac. Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Renee. I'm Chief Operating Officer with Home First. Home First has been serving Santa Clara County with homelessness services for more than 40 years. We offer outreach, congregate shelters, emergency interim housing, permanent housing, prevention services, just a full spectrum of services that we offer throughout the county, serve more than 5,000 people every year. And as a service provider for this project, Home First will staff the site with a team of homelessness services professionals, and they will be tasked with supporting residents to become independently housed. So this includes services such as case management, where our team works with each individual in developing housing plans, and then they help navigate the process and linking to the necessary resources to achieve plan goals. We'll offer lots of services on site in terms of education opportunities, workshops, life skills, trainings on topics ranging from health and wellness to employment preparedness. We will also have a mental health clinician on site, supporting with one-on-one therapy, with group counseling. They'll be responsive to mental health crises. So just a full kind of wraparound approach to services here on site. And in addition to supporting with just the kind of homelessness services on site, we are also tasked with community integration and ensuring that the project and the residents that are being served here are well integrated into the community. And so we do that in a few ways. And one of the best ways to do that is establishing some open communication with neighboring residents and business owners, creating that, that advisory committee, that community advisory committee that Councilmember Davis mentioned earlier. We've been participants in that approach in several different projects, and it really does provide the opportunity to kind of troubleshoot any challenges. Also offer opportunities for folks to get engaged in the project themselves and having some say as to what is happening on site, even providing some volunteer opportunities for those interested. We're also responsible to manage our residents and the impact that they're making on the community. So we'll be incorporating things like good neighbor agreements and site rule acknowledgements during the intake process to ensure that everyone that's coming in is understanding that their behavior in the community will impact their stay in the program. So we'll have practices like quiet hours, limiting visitation or visitors on site, And, we manage that behavior in different ways. One of the ways that's been super successful for us is creating behavioral contracts with individuals that are somewhat challenging, to hold them accountable. But as a whole, it's a very supportive environment for both the people staying there and the surrounding communities. We'll also have security on site, which patrols not just the site itself, but kind of the surrounding area as well, to ensure that things are going well, things that make sure that residents are conducting themselves appropriately in the community. And again, that open communication with neighbors and business owners will definitely help with that. So in a nutshell, that's what Home First will be doing on site. I'll turn it back to you, Isaac.
Thanks, Renee. Thanks, John, for that presentation on both organizations. Much appreciated. Okay, moving on to this next slide, summary proposals in San Jose. What this slide is essentially we're trying to communicate here is that we're not specifically targeting District 6, right? We recognize as a statewide opportunity that we could leverage state dollars and bring to San Jose into our community and try to be successful across the city of San Jose. For this particular round in HomeKey 2.0, we are targeting at least 5 opportunities citywide, so that we could be successful in. And if we're good, and hopefully we could make this happen for our community, that we could bring and create at least 738 new units to San Jose, sprinkled out throughout San Jose with this Project HomeKey opportunity that's being managed by the state of California. Next slide. Next steps. We're going to continue to have community conversations with the folks that are in this particular area. If you have any questions or concerns, please be free to contact the housing department, contact your council offices to make sure we could do this in partnership and make sure we're successful in this endeavor. Next steps, we are in the process of preparing and submitting our HomeKey grant application. We are trying to submit our application December. There's going to be a 45-day grace period from HCD when they review our application. And if we're awarded, we're going to proceed on to next steps, which look like, exploring and establishing a neighborhood advisory groups in partnership with our council office to make sure that we engage our community and make sure we're successful on this front. And again, and if we're awarded from City HCD, we will return to City Council and seek authorization to purchase the properties, partner with urban housing communities and Home First, and provide the property management services needed for this particular community at this particular site at the Arena Hotel. Again, I think this comes to the end of our presentation, Jeffrey, if I'm not mistaken. But it is about partnerships. It's about coming together. There's certainly a need in our communities to address the homelessness that's impacting our communities. And I think the state recognizes it. And then, again, the city of San Jose has to participate and make sure that we're successful on these applications and create the units that we need to create to provide the housing that is much needed in San Jose. I think that is the end of our presentation. And I think we can move into the Q&A portion of this experience, and let's have at it. Let's see if we could address your concerns.
Great, thanks, Isaac, and thanks to everybody who just participated in the presentation. That was very informative. So we have, again, just to remind everyone in the audience, there's the Q&A function, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So if you'd like to enter a question for the panelists, please do so. I know our panelists have already answered a handful of questions that have been submitted. There's a few more that are pending. So I'm going to go through now and read a few of the questions that have not yet been answered. And can
I talk about the Community Advisory Committee a little
sure.
bit before
we do that? Councilmember, feel free.
Sorry, I thought there was a slide and I was typing answers to the question, so I may have missed it. I heard somebody say Community Advisory Committee, but I just want to talk about a little bit about how I structure that. So it is led by my office, and for those of you who came in late, hi, I'm Councilmember Deb Davis. I'm your council representative for this area. And the way that I've done these in the past is it is open to, it's a public meeting. We send out emails about them, but it's open really. I want people to commit. If you're going to be on the commission or on the committee, as opposed to just, coming to the meeting occasionally, then I would like you to commit to regular attendance. We will do them anywhere from monthly to quarterly, depending on what the interest of the group is. And then this sort of only other, I would say 2 other requirements in addition to regular attendance to be a committee member as opposed to just an attendee to the meeting is, so regular attendance, to be living in the neighborhood or to have a business in the neighborhood, any kind of property owner or resident of the neighborhood. It's really important to me that the stakeholders who have the lived experience in the area are the ones who are on the committee. That's really important. And then the other thing I would just ask is for you to commit to making sure that your neighbors know about what we discuss at the meetings, because we don't tend to have a lot of regular attendees beyond the committee members. So that's something with my office, and somebody in the Q&A asked how they could learn more about it. Please email my office. I put the email address in there. It's district6@sanjoseca.gov, and just tell me that you're interested in being a committee member or you want to be on the email list for the Arena Hotel CAC, and that's how you do that. And then what we normally do at those meetings is we have somebody from the housing department is there. We usually have somebody from PD there, and then the committee members and then anybody else that's an interested party. So because this is close to the arena and it's close to some other nearby businesses, we will make sure to invite them as well if they think that they're going to be impacted by this, to make sure that everybody's views are represented and well represented for the area. And there's something else I was going to say about that. Oh, when we had it at Bascom, we had parks and library involved because they were on site as well. But we talk through the issues, we have an agenda, we discuss it. As issues arise, Home First will be there because they're the service provider on site. And Renee's actually been to those meetings because Renee was, Home First was the service provider for our overnight warming location at Bascom. So we get all the interested parties in the room and we talk about issues as they arise, and hopefully before they arise. That's one of the things that we do. And then the other thing we do, honestly, is we build community. So one of the things that we're doing right now at our Evans Lane site is we're talking with the CAC this month about what we're going to do for Christmas for the folks, because we've got families there and we've got young kids and we've got teens, and then we've got some older adults and even some younger adults. So we're going to talk about kind of how we can make the holiday month special for them. So that's one of the other things that we do at the CAC meetings.
Thank you, Councilmember Davis, on that. Any other questions out there? Jeff, you're managing that piece, right?
Yeah, so I can go ahead and start with this. So the first question, and I've heard this from other people in other HomeKey meetings, and this is about potential redevelopment. So someone is asking, what are the potential future uses or future developments beyond the Arena Hotel for this site?
John, you want to take that?
Sure. So I don't have a specific answer, because as we kind of talked about at the beginning of this presentation, it depends on a number of factors. One is it goes back to community engagement. Number two, it goes back to what funding sources are available at that time when we're going to be redeveloping it. And then third, we have to get with planning and figure out there's setback requirements, parking requirements, and all of that stuff. In general, though, you're allowed somewhere between 175 units to 200 units. I don't think it'll go that high, but that is a general maximum that you could do.
Great, thanks, John. So Tyler has a question about behavioral issues with the residents and what we're going to do to make sure that there are no behavioral issues. And I know, Renee, just a moment ago, you talked a little bit about what Home First has done at other sites. But if you can just maybe reiterate or clarify for Tyler and for everyone else listening, how does Home First try to ensure success and try to make sure that the residents abide by the rules and that they're good neighbors to the rest of the community?
Sure. I mean, I think the process starts at the intake and setting the expectation at the start, right? And we're going through the intake process and going through the site rules, and they sign off on acknowledgement of those site rules. We set and review a good neighborhood agreement that kind of outlines the expectation for their behavior in their community. We also try to integrate even those individuals within the community, right? So one of the things that we'll be working towards is increasing their income, hopefully through employment. We know that, just across the country, there's an issue with lack of employee candidates. So hopefully we can get people trained up in certain areas and get them employed even in the neighborhoods themselves. But ultimately, I mean, we're holding folks accountable to their behavior when it's reported, when it's viewed. We take a kind of progressive disciplinary approach, kind of like we would an employee, and giving those verbal and written warnings, putting people on a behavioral contract if necessary. And then ultimately, if we need to exit someone, unfortunately, that's something that we do.
And maybe, Jeff, if I can add to that, there is a difference between, say, a call from somebody that needs emergency services for medical reasons. The impact of homelessness and the way we categorize it and the way we talk about it is there's a functional age versus a chronological age. And our unhoused members who are chronically homeless, who've been on the streets, age faster. They have higher geriatric issues, health issues. And once they start seeking help in the beginning, there is an increase in a call for medical service. We do have statistics that show once people are accessing those medical services that they do get better and the calls do come down. But I did want to make that distinction between, somebody who has been on the streets for a long time, enters a program, their body relaxes. So it's not uncommon for us to even see somebody pass because they are now indoors and their body relaxes, and all of those. It's like any one of us when we're super stressed out and then we take a day off and your body attacks and you get sick. So very similar to that. So I did want to make that distinction because we will see some folks that will call because they need medical attention and they should call.
That's a really good point, Consuelo. I mentioned the creating housing plans for every individual, and part of that process includes our support in connecting folks to medical services and getting them re-engaged to a primary medical provider, and hopefully we reduce some of those calls, but that is a very good point to make. And we have at Home First many different types of sites, whether it's permanent housing or shelter or whatever. And you do see a lot of first responders come, but it's primarily for those medical reasons.
Right, thank you both for that. Then Belinda has another question that's somewhat related to this, or maybe it actually goes to the intake process, Renee, and that's about background checks. Does Home First conduct background checks for sites like this?
That'll depend on the site requirements. I can share with you that most of, if not all of the City of San Jose sites that we work in require background checks to eliminate certain items in the background, and that includes folks that have been convicted for a sex offense, folks that have been convicted for making methamphetamines, and the other one is arson. So those are the three big ones that we normally work to screen out.
Great, thanks a lot. Alex is asking, and I don't know, this might be for Isaac or for Consuelo, what are factors that might prevent this Project HomeKey application from being successful and proceeding?
Do you want to take initial crack at it, Consuelo, and then I add to it? I don't care. We could both double team.
Thanks, Alex, for the question. Definitely the number one concern is the competitiveness of the HomeKey funding. Because we are probably for this site applying through the geographic distribution. We are aware of many applications that are coming in the Bay Area region. So that would be one, to address the question of what would stop us from or prevent us from moving forward is not getting a HomeKey award would, I won't speak for Isaac, I'll let him plug in there, but I would say that that's one big concern.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Consuelo. I think we do have a strong application considering all the factors that we're looking at, right? I think the only piece that makes me lose some sleep at night is the competitiveness. There's a lot of folks. It's a regional wide competition here. We got folks from San Francisco all the way down to San Jose that are trying to apply and get these HomeKey dollars. So yeah, we have to be fast. We have to be good. We have to submit our application if we're awarded. But the only thing that's going to keep us from getting awarded, I think, is the competition that's out there.
And
Thanks.
then be in the long-term plan, which I think the question that Alex asked was for the new affordable housing. I will just say that nothing is secured until there's financing. So the entitlements, the financing. So Alex, it's really like any one of our other housing development sites. There are challenges. I'm sure John can speak to how hard it's been to get tax credits. And other financing. So, there are the financing factors and the land use piece and all of the work that's involved with new construction.
Hey, John, I don't know if you want to just kind of quickly brief and touch on what's the development timeline and the barriers that make us be slow in that process. But it's the financing, it's the tax credits, it's the other financial instruments that we bring to these sites that make it a little bit challenging. But go ahead, if you can elaborate on that, John, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. So as Consuelo and Isaac had pointed out, anytime you're developing affordable housing of pretty much any type, it requires a lot of different resources because your rents are below market and you can't get standard financing. So, there's financing from the county or the city or other HCD programs that we apply for, and they're all competitive. So this one, on the long term, would probably be a bond deal, tax-exempt bond deal with tax credits. It may also include some other HCD programs. Again, they're all competitive. They all have different funding rounds. So you got to first go get this funding from HCD or the city or the county. And then from there, you go get your bonds and your tax credits. So it's a lengthy process. And before we get to that process, we'll be looking at the site with the architects and trying to determine, what fits in the neighborhood, what, meet with the council office, make sure that we're on board with, what they want to envision. I'm sure there'll be rollouts to the community, a rollout. Here's, the direction that we're taking. So that's why, as Consuelo mentioned earlier, it's a minimum of a 5-year process to get through all of that. And then to get your financing for the next phase. It's probably, 5-7 years is probably where we're at.
Thanks, John and Isaac. And before I move on, I just want to ask Consuelo another question. This has come up in previous HomeKey meetings in other districts. You talk about the competitive nature of this, and if you can explain why this funding from the state is so valuable and why cities and municipalities are so anxious to get their hands on this, and maybe if you can do that by giving people some context about how expensive it is to build from scratch per unit versus acquiring something through Project HomeKey. I think if you give people that context, they'll understand why it's so competitive.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm happy to. Maybe I'll start with the introduction that Councilmember Davis gave, which is the problem that we're facing in our community is severe from a homelessness perspective. In our last PIC count, we had over 9,000 people homeless, and we have the highest unsheltered population in our community. So there's that. We have also not kept pace with the production of affordable housing over the last 10 years or probably longer. So we have a lot of catching up to do. Communities don't have resources to do this. It costs on average, what we're seeing in the 35 projects that the county has funded in the last 4 years, at the low end, about $635,000 a unit for construction. On the high end, Isaac, I think we have one San Jose project that's about $962,000 per unit. John, I think some of your South County projects might be a little lower because they're less dense, they're wood frame construction. So all of that, with our two primary sources of funding right now at the local level being the 950 Measure A housing bond, the city's Measure E, that's pretty much it. So when we have an opportunity like this from the state to pull in money, that's a grant that moves quickly, that has little strings when you think about it, and has this opportunity to leverage our connection and as Councilmember Davis mentioned, the coordination between our organizations. I think it makes it for the perfect opportunity for us to partner and get those dollars from the state that otherwise we won't be able to do this on our own.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I think it's a two-pronged approach here, where one is that, the state recognized that we have an issue, and you could look at this HomeKey opportunity as an acquisition opportunity. We can come in and look at hotels that are distressed assets, and we could buy them on the cheap, knowing that economically we could see some value in buying them now, knowing that we could tie up that land, and then there's some future development opportunities down the road. So on the short term, we're able to buy immediately, house folks immediately, and then long term, we have a development plan to densify those sites and bring some new development on that site, and then bring more units and then house additional folks. So it bodes really well on the short term and long term endeavors that we're trying to accomplish here.
And I just want to point out that's a good segue, I think, to one of the questions about the immediate impact, the positive immediate impact to the neighborhood. And that is that this site is a site that the PD has been going to even before the pandemic. So before it became a shelter for homeless folks during the pandemic, even before the pandemic, it was what the police department considered a problem site and had some issues with management not having great clientele. So the opportunity now is for services. So right now I believe it's close to like what an emergency shelter is. There aren't a lot of services there for the folks that are staying there, and not everybody who's there is someone who's working with the Office of Supportive Housing, doesn't have a voucher, right? So some people are regular motel clients and others are using a voucher because they came in off the street, and there are no services. So the immediate positive impact to the neighborhood when Home First takes this over is that there will be services for those residents, and the police department, which fully supports this changeover and this shift in not only management but also ownership, they're very much looking forward to that because we expect there would be fewer issues in the neighborhood.
Thanks, Council Member. So the next question is another one from Belinda about a site coming to the 95126 zip code, which is one of the perhaps more expensive areas of the city of San Jose. And I don't know, Council Member, if you wanted to take that and address why you think that it makes sense to put affordable housing in this area, this zip code. Yeah, I think honestly, it's important for affordable housing to go everywhere in the city, and we have 95125 in our district as well, and we've got affordable housing there and homeless sites there. District 10 is also a more advantaged district, and they're looking at having a site from this HomeKey funding as well. It really needs to go everywhere because the need is so great. We don't have the opportunity to pick and choose sites. We didn't have an overabundance of sites and then chose 5. We really picked as many as we could get through the gate as quickly as possible. Yeah, and like I said, I think this is actually, it's better for people to be housed than to be
in the creeks for environmental reasons, for safety reasons, and frankly, there's going to be less crime when they don't have those really basic needs to have to take care of.
Okay, thanks. I think the next question is probably going to be for either John or Isaac, and that is, excuse me, what is the condition of the Arena Hotel? Is it ready for use, or will it require extensive renovation?
It's, I can take that one. It's actually in overall pretty good shape. We'll do some minor rehabilitation. We're going to have to create a couple of additional offices to be able to deliver the case management and social service programs that we want to be able to offer. And there'll be, but overall, it's in good shape.
Okay, thanks. So the next question is from Laurent. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. What learnings have we gathered from current supportive housing communities downtown or elsewhere? Are the services being provided as expected at those locations? And do we have a funding source to provide similar services here, not just initially, but over the long term at this site? And I don't know if Renee, that might be for you or for someone else on the panel.
Jeff, I didn't catch that first part of the question. Can you say that one more time, please?
Yeah, what learnings have we gathered from current supportive housing communities downtown or elsewhere in the city? And are services being provided as expected at other sites? And then also about funding for services at this site, not just initially, but over the longer term.
I mean, I'll briefly share, from a provider perspective, but perhaps Consuelo I'll punt it over to Consuelo in a second here, but I mean, we are also providers at several permanent supportive housing sites. I think the biggest win, if you will, in terms of providing homelessness services is that once you get someone housed, then all of the services that they require to become more stable in the long term become easier to address. So, whether it's through case management, mental health support, medical health support, that's probably the best way to end homelessness in general, is to get people housed as quickly as possible, then address all of those issues that likely led people to homelessness.
I think what the question was trying to get at is, I think it has been widely reported about the original Second Street Studios, the original model, and how much trouble there was with that. So either Consuelo, if you could talk about that original model and how it's changed over time, and the addition now also of the community advisory groups to really have the neighborhoods surrounding to be involved on a very regular basis, to be able to have a clear line of communication for when issues arise. That would be helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilmember Davis. And interestingly enough, I actually was at Second Street Studios this afternoon, touring the site and looking at some of the renovations that they're making to the property now. And so there's several lessons learned. I will say that in our county, the coordinated entry system, housing first, all of that is relatively new in our community. We started this path maybe 10 years ago with Housing 1000. In 2015 or so, we started the coordinated entry system. Second Street Studios opened in 2019. Then we had 2 other properties open in the middle of a pandemic, where the original architecture of these sites was from an interior perspective, was the service delivery model was this collaborative space where you had huddle spaces. And in COVID, you couldn't. For the first 6 or 9 months, the opportunity for people to be within the same space, no vaccinations, constant testing, that was a lesson learned for us in terms of how we design these spaces. And so what do you do now with something that's built? So a lot of the lessons learned that we're looking at now is being more intentional when we identify a property that's 100% permanent supportive housing, where it's sited, the neighborhood matters. You know, Second Street Studios is located in a neighborhood that prior to its opening, there are other challenges in that community. And so how do you use the site as an opportunity to bring in additional resources, so as an anchor? And really having more eyes on the street and thinking like a planner, right? How do you bring that to the front? Those are some of the lessons learned from a design perspective. How do you provide services in an emergency, in a long-term emergency or crisis, like COVID has inhibited our ability to meet in person? So if we think about our own mental health as housed individuals who are, for the most part, okay, and how hard it was for those folks that had to shelter in place. Our office was at the front lines, if you will. So we've not stopped going to the office, as you can tell from my mask. And so there's just, imagine what a person who has not been stably housed, who is not able to receive that same level of service because of restrictions with that. So what we're doing now is a deep dive to understand what are the right level of services. What is the right mix? Renee, I know you see that in some of the learnings in the integrated models for the properties that we have in North County, and how we deliver service there. If veterans have a different need, I think one of the questions was, you know, there's different types of homeless people. Absolutely. Just like every one of us is unique, how do you come up with a package for an individual that best suits them? And make the space for that. So rather than thinking about what's the budget we have available, what is the service that the individual needs? So those are some of the lessons learned throughout the entire system. And I think it's looking at, Councilmember Davis, you talk about the CAC, but also the role of the resident service provider. They build community within the building, but how do they build community within, you know, we're a neighbor. And how do I talk to my neighbor when I have a problem? So building that environment for those types of conversations, and it's work, and you have to be intentional with that.
There's somebody who has their hand up too. I want to be mindful of people who want to ask a question live.
Oh, Councilman, there's no capability for people in the audience to speak during this event. All the questions are being submitted through the Q&A function.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought that if they raised their hands, they were able to ask the question live. There was someone who had their hand up. So for that person, it looks like they took it down. Want to make sure that you know then to type your question into the Q&A box. There's an FYI. I just want to. It's kind of a follow-up that about the funding secured for all services planned to be delivered over the lifetime of the project. Consuelo, I want to throw that one to you. So I want to just be clear, the county and the city both budget on an annual basis, but if you could talk a little bit about how the budgeting process works for services and the commitment that the county has made on services for the sites that they're providing services for.
Absolutely. I will share with you that the interim portion of the Arena Hotel is not necessarily something the county is funding, because that's on an interim basis. In terms of the long-term plan, as John Bigley mentioned, the plan for the type of housing hasn't fully been discussed, right? You're still looking at your unit count, subpopulation conversations, how many of the units will be for supportive housing versus for those that might be at risk. So let's just assume for a second that of whatever gets built, that 25% of those are considered supportive housing, where the county has made a commitment to provide the services. We do make a commitment through an MOU with the development partner to provide services for 40 years. It is budgeted on an annual basis. And we also apply for grants through the state and the federal government to help subsidize some of that. We also leverage all of our internal funding through behavioral health, social services agency, and we have a $10 million reserve for a rainy day. because within our system, we are tracking goals and we have size that reserve based on the number of supportive housing units that we think we need to build based on the data that we have. And at the same time, tackling the inflow of people that become homeless and connecting them to other safety net services, so that we don't have to continue this process, right? So build more housing, connect people before they become homeless, and have a slush fund in the event of a rainy day.
Thanks, Consuelo. There's also a question that was posed, excuse me, a few minutes ago. And I think it gets to the point of the target population. We've kind of talked about the fact that there are different types of people who may become homeless, but do we have, can we tell the audience here who our target population, who we envision as our target population who would inhabit this hotel if we're successful?
So I mean, we haven't completely finalized that. However, the discussion we've had is to one, prioritize individuals from the surrounding community, but also target individuals that are falling on this community queue, which is a by name list, if you will, of all of the homeless individuals in Santa Clara County, and they populate this list based on a level of acuity. And so there's kind of a spot that is, right above a range that is going to get some supportive services already through existing programs. And right above that, there's a range that likely isn't going to get any type of subsidies right away. So these are also folks that are not so high in the acuity side of things that an environment like this wouldn't be successful. So it's a little bit of a sweet spot, if you will, of individuals that we can support through kind of intensive case management and try to work towards permanent housing without a subsidy right away. There's still also the possibility that they end up in a subsidy a little bit down the road. And it'd be even that much better that we've already started to work with the individual. So it's a little bit of a sweet spot in that greater community queue that exists for the county.
And maybe if I can add, Jeff, to what Renee said, is there's 9,000 homeless people. We have about 4,000 spots. It's not enough to serve everybody. And once we create a permanent supportive housing slot, that doesn't open unless the person passes, unless the person exits from the program. So you basically have to sustain that and create new capacity. And so because of that, and how long it takes to build and how long it takes to line everything up, there are folks who are ready and willing to receive service, but their acuity level, as Renee mentioned, they're in the middle. And so by the time we get to the top, the folks are basically don't have an option. So one of the gaps we've identified, as I mentioned, is looking at what are the gaps in the system for folks now, and how do we use this as an opportunity to provide interim solutions and help them actually connect. Renee, to your point, in some instances with your help, they might be able to get a regular apartment that doesn't have, that isn't considered a supportive housing unit. And with like case management, connection to vocational services or what have you, is able to quote unquote recover. And so we're really looking at how does the Arena Hotel serve that gap? And it is really complicated. There's rent structures, there's the HCD requirements, and being very honest and truthful to the people that we're going to serve, and the expectation of rent and all of that, the conversation there. So I don't know that it's been fully decided and your application hasn't been submitted. Once we have that in order, then I think that's what will guide the target population, right? As
Consuelo. So I think that we've actually made pretty good progress going through the questions. I don't know if people in the audience have more questions, but if so, please enter them in the Q&A, because I think we've gone through the majority of them. I will say, I think we have another one for you, Renee. It comes from Sandra, And she's wondering if there are successful Home First projects or properties that you're currently working at, providing services at, that you might want to share with the audience so they can kind of get a sense of where you've had some success. Home First has had some success.
Sure. In terms of kind of that community integration, there's a few. I mean, I'll say that we've not participated in this style of housing, if you will, in a motel or a motel conversion for a project like this, but we have 4 emergency interim housing, which are more modular housing units, again, in partnership with the city of San Jose here. 2 of them came through the HomeKey program, and they're fairly new. I think we're inching up on a year of operation or so. But I would say, there's a site at Mayberry in kind of North San Jose, in which the project has integrated really well into that community. And we have that same idea of having an advisory committee that we've developed out there, and have the surrounding residents and local business owners, and they've been very engaged and even have started to volunteer within the projects. And we're seeing more and more of that at the other sites as we spend more time there. But yeah, I mean, those are the projects that I would point to in terms of this type of model.
Great, thanks. So that just about wraps up the questions we have there. I see that Helen is asking about possible tours of this site or some similar site. I don't know if the people on this call are actually in a position to answer that question, but we can, if any of the panelists want to step up and give it a shot, that's fine. Otherwise, we can find out if a tour is possible at some later date. I don't want to commit anybody to giving a tour if that's not possible.
I don't know if we could tour the site now. We're still in the middle of negotiations and things of that nature, and there's still a business that's being operated on the site, and we can't disturb the operations of that. But I think at some point in the future, when the opportunity becomes more real, perhaps we could schedule a tour at that point, and then get a walkthrough with Renee and John Bigley of what our goals are and objectives are at that site.
Great. Thanks, Isaac. So I think before we wrap up here, council member, is there any final words or final remarks you'd like to share with the people in the audience?
I just want to thank you all for attending and for your questions. You asked really good questions, and I really appreciate the openness to being involved. I've already gotten a couple of emails saying I want to be on the community advisory committee. I love that. Keep them coming. I appreciate that, and this is something where it's really important for us to stay involved, and not least because the more eyes we have on the project, the more likely we are to keep getting all the services funded for the site in future years. So I want to thank you all for attending, and please do stay involved. We'll do a follow-up email with this the link to this recording when it gets up to the housing site, so that you can forward it on to anyone who you don't know attended or didn't attend, is what I meant to say.
Great. Thank you, council member. Thank you to all the panelists, and thank you to everybody in the audience who took the time to participate. And I think with that, I'm going to wrap it up and stop the recording. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.